the power.
Hi! In this video, I will present the plot of the game, Ogre Battle The March of the Black Queen. A lot is officially vague and left to interpretation, so I made the script more simplified for understanding. Information on the path that leads to the world ending will be used, which is considered the canon of the story. The facts will be presented chronologically and focused on the main events for the main plot of this specific game. I hope you like it. In the distant past, humanity was at war with the underworld residents who drew their powers from the abyss, and who, because of that, were very powerful to the point of even rivaling the gods. The most powerful were called Ogre, and were commanded by the dark god of destruction and lord of the ogres, Diablo. After many battles, the ogres showed that they were superior by defeating, killing, and feeding on every human they came across. When humanity was about to be wiped out, the gods decided to intervene on behalf of humans. They sent the armies of heaven made up of angels, 3 mighty knights from ages past and 12 holy disciples, to help in the battle. The 3 knights are Slus the Red, Fenwal the Ice, and Dragon Fongfogel, and they lived on islands that floated in the sky just watching the events below them. These islands can only be accessed through Chaos Gates, which are magical gates scattered across the land that connect mortal land with the heavens or the abyss. The 12 disciples were also known as White Sages because they were able to conjure powerful white magic, in addition to a powerful enchantment that turned allies into extremely strong unique weapons. This would be much used in the battle to come. The gods also forged a divine grail and gave it to the human warrior Lexer, which would aid him in combat and symbolize the true king chosen by the gods. And so began the last and decisive battle, with the forces of the gods descending from the clouds, the last remaining humans and the warriors of the abyss commanded by Diablo in the small islands of the Castellation Sea. This event became known as
You can come along. You can come along.
The battle was very intense and powerful. The underworld warriors were extremely resistant and strong due to dark magic, but their weakness was the divine power that now helped humans. The 3 legendary knights faced Gaff, one of several ogre generals, and sealed him in the Antangel region, while the rest of the ogres were sent to Chaos Gates to the underworld, and these gates were sealed. With the forces of evil now defeated and sealed, humanity could rise again, prosper, and live in peace as the gods wished. However, to their surprise, that is not what happened. The human race begins to fight among themselves because of their vanities, envy, and personal desires for power, which ends up infuriating the gods, who swear never to help humans again, ordering their envoys to return to the skies. Upon returning, one of the legendary knights, Fenwal, has a premonition that a second ogre battle would occur at some point, so betraying the will of the gods, he leaves his divine sword Brynhilde to a human. This sword has the power to break any seal, so when humans needed help again, they could use the sword in a chaos gate to go to the floating islands to get help from the heavens. The 12 disciples decide to stay on Earth to transmit their teachings and help humans live in peace. Fearful of the ability of their God-given powers, they decided to seal their divine magic powers in 12 zodiac stones that could only be used by a true champion chosen by the gods, as their combined powers could even break the seals of the Chaos Gates. And so it was done for a long time until Daruta, the most powerful of the 12 sages, ends up getting involved with dark magic and rebelling against the other sages in search of power that the abyss could bring. Without the 12 stones to be able to open the gate and access the underworld, he decides to use his new powers of dark magic to create a 13th stone, the Black Diamond. The stone's power became so immense that it equaled the other 12 stones put together and would be able to break the seals on the gates. Quickly, the 3 legendary knights return again and defeat him before he can complete his objective, trapping his soul inside the Black Diamond and taking this stone to the heavens with them, while choosing another person to take his place in the group of 12. Over time, the 12 zodiac stones are scattered and hidden across the continent with the successors of the 12 sages. A long time later. The Unification. With the defeat of the ogres in the Ogre Battle, humanity was able to develop and spread to all regions of the world. As it had been condemned by the gods, there were many wars between humans in each location. Let's focus in this video on the region known as the Zytogenia continent. This region has been the scene of many conflicts due to the creation of several chaotic and independent kingdoms that always fought in incessant conflicts for power. But at a given moment in history, 5 figures come together to resolve these conflicts once and for all. Known as the 5 heroes, each one represented a kingdom. King Gran Zenobia representing the kingdom of Zenobia. Prince Rashian representing the kingdom of Charlem. Dalkas the Beast Master representing the kingdom of Ophis. Monk Lavian representing the kingdom of Horai, and Sage Rashidi representing the kingdom of Highland. Through this alliance, they ended up with the other kingdoms that were on the continent, unifying them with their own kingdoms, leaving only the 5 main ones now in the region. The kingdom of Zenobia is particularly interesting, as the royal family owned the so-called 3 mystic treasures. The Holy Grail of the warrior Lexer, the divine sword Brynhilde, and the mystic armband. The kingdoms of Highland and Zenobia are the 2 largest and most important among the 5 kingdoms. At the same time, to the north of Zytogenia, on another continent was expanding the Holy Lodi's Empire, an empire with religious goals to expand the Lodism religion around the world, subjugating lands and people through violent methods, domination and death to those who did not convert. One day, a rumor reached the ears of Queen Endora of Highland that the Empire of Lodis was planning to invade, dominate, and subjugate the entire continent of Zytogenia. Queen Endora was known to be a very kind and caring person, being adored by all people. She was aware of the great power of the Lodi's Empire, and although the Highland region was strong, she would not be able to defend the entire continent from an invasion alone. So she gathered the other 4 rulers of the other regions of the continent and begged an alliance between all to face the empire of Lodis. The other 4 rulers of the kingdoms did not believe her story and refused to form an alliance pact. Worse than that, they saw Endora's desperation as a sign of weakness, so what happened was that the 4 rulers came together to invade Highland's kingdom and dominate it. A civil war was declared. The Great War. With the union of the kingdoms of Zenobia, Charlem, Ophis, and Horai, the kingdom of Highland would have no chance and would be completely defeated. With Queen Endora's despair, Sage Rashidi, one of the 5 heroes who had previously unified the continent, appears and offers his help to deal with this situation. Rashidi was considered the greatest wizard on the continent, and in his quest for more power, he ends up coming into contact with dark magic, being corrupted by his greed, and begins to want to acquire the powers of the Abyss for himself and become immortal. He makes a pact with the Ogre Lord Diablo that he would give the whole world to the demon in exchange for power. And so he starts making a plan to open the Chaos Gates, gather enough power, and resurrect Diablo. Unaware of his true intentions, Queen Endora accepts Rashidi's help and preparations for the Great War begin. Queen Endora is corrupted and controlled by the evil arts of Rashidi and declares the creation of the sacred Zytogenian Empire, declared herself Empress, and begins preparations not only to defend herself against the 4 kingdoms, but decides to invade all of them and unify them under her own flag, ruling over the entire continent alone. She places General Hikash Vinzalf as the commander of her imperial troops and 4 elite knights below him to start the invasions. The 4 are known as Devis and are Debonair, Figaro, Previa, and Lovelin. The sage Rashidi had 3 apprentices at this time: Capella, Albaleo, and Saradin. When Rashidi told of his evil plan, only Saradin was against it. In retaliation, Albelio turned Saradin into a stone statue. Seduced by the pursuit of power, Capella studied necromancy and Albelio studied ways to resurrect and maintain youth. Queen Endora's son Prince Gears is also corrupted and controlled, and Rashidi exchanges his soul for an evil form of immortality. Rashidi saves the sorcerer Omicron, who was being sentenced to death for practicing black magic. Omicron casts a forbidden spell that makes the dead rise, creating a massive army of the dead to fight for the Empire. The war begins and the armies face each other. The new empire now strengthened with the powers of Rashidi, and the army of the dead manages to defeat one by one of the invading armies. Some provinces and traders on the mainland quickly ally themselves with the new empire in search of personal advantage and in fear of retaliation. The same can be said of some warriors of the kingdoms. Rashidi contacts and corrupts the ninja master Prokian, who was the commander of the troops of the kingdom of Ophis, causing him to betray and murder the king Ophis he served. With the death of the king, the region was easily taken over by the empire. Rashidi uses his powers on Prince Gears, making him disguise himself as Ash, the captain of the guard of King Gran of the Kingdom of Zenobia. Gears in disguise enters Zenobia's castle and assassinates the king, starting an invasion. This invasion also kills one of the king's sons. His wife Florin is taken captive, and the other son, Tristan, is not located as he is escorted out of town to be hidden by a knight. The real Captain Ash is arrested on a charge of treason and murder, but he accepts the punishment for having been unable to protect his king.
During the invasion, many townspeople fled into the forests. Apros, a resident of Zenobia, who hated the king, betrays his land and declares allegiance to the empire.
To prove his loyalty, he ends his parents' lives and presents the empress with their bodies. To show even more dedication, he sets fire to the nearby forests, killing all the refugees. With this show of loyalty, the empire makes him duke and governor of a region. The apprentice Capella goes to the scorched forest and uses the souls of the dead to summon demons, further strengthening the armies with these creatures. Other soldiers from the kingdom of Zenobia have also fled and gone into hiding, seeking another time to reclaim their homeland. And in this way, one by one the four kingdoms that had threatened Endora are occupied by their commanders and the former kingdoms deposed, forming part of a great empire that controlled the entire continent with an iron fist through the now Black Queen. Here Endora will rule for 25 years until the start of the game. During these years, the evil attitudes of the Empress, who became more and more sarcastic and cruel, will generate revolt among the population of the continent, and through the union of some people and former soldiers of some dominated kingdoms, the Liberation Army will be founded, seeking to overthrow the Empress and extinguish the Empire, encouraging internal revolts in several cities. Rashidi will send knights to torture the former Queen of Zenobia to learn the location of the three mystic treasures, in particular the divine sword Brynhild that will allow him to break the seals of the Chaos Gates. Unsuccessful with that, he decides to seek the 12 Zodiac Stones to have enough power to open the gates. As he has evil intentions, he is unworthy to find and use them, so again his plan is defeated. In his research, he ends up finding out about the Black Diamond, the 13th Zodiac Stone that had as much power as the other 12 added together and would serve his plan. This stone had been taken to the heavens, so Rashidi used her magic to contact an angel named Maisel. He makes her fall in love with him and enter into a forbidden contract in which she would help him and also steal the Black Diamond from the heavens and bring it to him. And so it is done. With the diamond in his possession, Maisel is used as bait to attract other angels who would come to his rescue and who would all be killed by Rashidi so that there would be no force capable of preventing his plan. Yushis, Maisel's sister, also tries to save her but is imprisoned by the mage. Rashidi uses the power of the Black Diamond to locate the Chaos Gates and break their seals, allowing him to travel to the floating islands. There, he bewitches the three legendary knights who resided there to be part of his army. With the Black Diamond, he is also able to communicate with the demon Gaff that was sealed away in a nearby land, promising to free him if he defeats his enemies for him. Anyone who refused to fulfill the Empress's mandates in the Empire was imprisoned or demoted, so all the people's hatred was turned towards Endora as a distraction while Rashidi acted in the shadows. But Monk Norn, who was the lover of David Debonair, managed to see in the shadows Rashidi's intentions and his control over the entire empire. This knowledge led to her being demoted and sent away to care for the empire's prisoners. General Hykash's daughter, Rani Venzalf, the first and only female paladin of the Northern Paladin Order, a group of elite honorable warriors who directly protected the Queen, had also discovered Rashidi's plans. But upon informing her father of this, he preferred to maintain his loyalty to the royal family and his duty despite the atrocities committed. To further show his loyalty, Hykash even agreed to offer his daughter's hand in marriage to Duke Apros when he asked. Rani sneaks away before they can stop her and force her to the wedding. Garrus secretly went in search of the whereabouts of Prince Tristan Zenobia, who had survived the castle invasion and was secretly training to become a knight. He meets with Monk Forrest, who refuses to betray the prince and give information as she says that this is not the will of the gods. Garrus executes Forrest as a warning to anyone who dares not obey the Empire. Forrest had a daughter named Aisha Noodle, who was in another region training to also become a monk. Upon hearing the news of her mother's death, she decides to return to her homeland. The Liberation Army tries to face the Empire in some uprisings and conflicts, but is always defeated by the Imperial warriors and forced to retreat and hide, with the hope that someday they would be able to free the people of the continent from the tyranny of their evil ruler.
And it is in this context that the game will begin.
25 years later. The March of the Black Queen. Our main character is Destin Ferota, a newly enlisted warrior in the Liberation Army who is called to be evaluated by the rebellion. Destin is taken to the castle of a powerful seer named Warren Omen, who previously served the royal family of Zenobia and who had prophesied that a hero would arise to lead the rebellion to victory. Arriving at the castle, his skills and personality are tested by Warren, who deems him worthy, proclaiming Destin the leader of the rebels and joining him to go after more allies. Destin encounters some refugee warriors from Zenobia who were still loyal to the Old Kingdom, in particular the leader of the Royal Knights named Lancelot Hamilton, who, seeing Warren's approval, decide to team up with Destin to avenge the death of their king and restore the kingdom of Zenobia. With his armada organized, Destin will begin to advance through the dominated territories of the Empire to free them.
Advancing to the Charlem border, the protagonist encounters Huso, a leader of a band of bandits that dominated the region and who had been hired by the Empire to hunt down and kill the fugitive warriors of the Zenobia Empire. Huso had killed one of Lancelot's regiment friends, so Lancelot defeats and kills the bandit, avenging his friend's death while Destin liberates the remainder of the region.
Advancing into the Charlem district, the rebellion will encounter another warrior who had fought for Zenobia in the civil war named Canopus Wolf. His childhood best friend Gilbald O'Brien, who was also romantically involved with his friend's sister, ruled this region. When the Empire began to invade, Canopus decided to fight to the end, but Gilbald decided to surrender for the good of the people of the region. This led Canopus to a deep disappointment with his friend and to give up fighting for any cause from there. Destin meets Iuria Wolf, Canopus' sister, who says that Gilbald felt guilty about the surrender and wished for death for it, but that Destin could save the two friends in the end. So, Destin convinces Canopus to join her group and they march to Gilbald. After defeating him, Gilbald shows regret and says that he only surrendered thinking about the good of the population. This makes Destin spare him and invites him to join the rebellion to fix his past mistakes. Canopus and Gilbald make up and join the Liberation Army together. Arriving at Lake Gensenia, rumors speak of the disappearance of women in the region and that the governor of the place, Sirius, would be responsible for it. Sirius was cursed and became a werewolf at night, so the Empire turned the region over to him to rule over and satisfy his animal instincts. Destin confronts the mighty creature at night and defeats it, freeing the region from its evil grasp. Moving on, the warriors come across the region ruled by Deneb Road, a witch who used crops to even human guinea pigs who were seduced by her beauty in her experiments. Destin faces the powerful witch and defeats her, deciding whether he should kill her or spare her life. Her life is spared and she joins the Liberation Army to seek more knowledge for her research. Destin may have spared her to show his good and merciful spirit, but rumors began to circulate in the region that he had actually been seduced by the witch's beauty, as had several other men before him. Destin and his army arrived in Pogrom Forest, the region that had been burned with the fugitives from Zenobia's castle invasion and which was now ruled by Rashidi's apprentice Capella, who used the spirits of the dead to summon demons. The mighty unholy mage is defeated by the group's efforts and killed, bringing his reign of terror to an end. The Liberation Army advances, finally arriving in a region that was Zenobia's castle and slums that the residents now lived in due to misery. This region was under the control of the Honorable David Debonair. Advancing against the Deva armies, Destin finds the former captain of Zenobia's royal guard, Ash, in a prison, who had been arrested on charges of killing the king. He is released and joins the warriors with the intention of avenging his king's death. Debonair and Ash cross swords and Ash questions Debonair's attitudes, pointing out that the northern warriors used to be honorable and now they are nothing more than assassins at the behest of an evil empress, showing all the evil that the mainland's population went through with her domain. Although Debonair was very loyal to the Empire, he begins to question its ruler's intentions, thus deciding to flee and confront the Empress about her attitudes. Destin and the other warriors of Zenobia finally regain their homeland and prepare to advance to the heart of the Empire where Endora was. With the news of the reconquest of the castle by the rebels, the rumor spreads that Debonair had died in combat for this to have happened, due to the loyalty of the Devis. They arrive at Avalon, the spiritual center of the Roshful faith, which was the religion created based on the teachings of the 12 sages of the past, and which was now being controlled by the immortal Prince Gers. In the midst of the conflicts, Destin finds Aisha, who was in the region because of the death of her mother. She chooses to join the rebellion to avenge her mother's death at the hands of Gers. Gers is defeated and his soul returns to be revived by the cursed spell that was upon him once more. The rebellion reaches Diaspora, a prison region for dissidents that monk Norm was in charge of. Although Norm was against the Empress and in favor of the rebels, she had heard the rumor that her beloved Debonair had died in the confrontation with the rebels, so she, seeking revenge, decides to face them. Norm is defeated and asks to be killed so she can finally unite with her lover, but Destin tells her that Debonair had not died and that he was going to confront the Empress' actions personally. Norm decides to join the Liberation Army to try to find Debonair. Moving on, Destin and her troop arrive at Castolian Sea, the region that was the site of the humans' last battle with the ogres. A rumor had circulated through this region that mermaid flesh would guarantee immortality, which threatened the existence of the few mermaids that lived in this region. The Empire offered protection and governance of the region to the mermaid leader, Porcius, in case she defeated the incoming rebellion. Porcius accepted the proposal and waited with his army to face them. Despite the advantage that the water terrain gave the creatures, Destin manages to advance, defeat the mermaid leader, and free the cities from the Imperial soldiers. At one of these locations, Destin encounters wrathful monks who were hiding one of Zenobia's mystical treasures. Seeing the rebels' commitment to the will of the gods and the good character of their leader, they decide to give Destin the sword Brynhildr, which was capable of breaking any seal. They also meet a witch who says that there were floating islands in the sky that guarded the divine warriors, and that the only way to access them was through the Chaos Gates. The protagonist is interested in going to these places in the future to seek the help of these warriors against the great power of the Empire. Marching through Balmorian ruins, another apprentice of Rashidi, Albelio, waited for the warriors. As they advanced and faced the warriors under Albelio's command, the Liberation Army hears about the story of Saradin, one of Rashidi's apprentices who was loved and admired by the locals many years ago, being carved several statues in his honor and scattered around the region after the supposed news of his death. In one of these statues, Destin ends up discovering that it was the petrified Saradin himself, and with the help of a magic item he manages to revive him. Saradin talks about Rashidi's evil plans and joins the rebellion to try to stop his former master. He faces his tormentor, Albelio, and is surprised that he still looks the same after 25 years. Albelio is defeated, but his body mysteriously disappears after the fight. David Debonair meets Empress Endora and begins to question her attitudes and the world he was creating with them. He is accused of treason, arrested and taken by Prince Gears to the floating city of Shangri-La for his punishment. Meanwhile, in the city of Milano, Duke Apros, who had asked the Empire General's daughter to marry him, starts preparing for the party even though the woman is missing. He hires several mercenaries to find and bring the girl in exchange for a lot of money, and it is one of these mercenaries that the rebel group finds nearby as they pass through the Valley of Castro. The band of mercenaries is defeated and Destin finds the paladin Ronnie hiding in the region. Seeing the good intentions and justice of the group, Ronnie joins the rebellion in order to end their pursuers and Rashidi's evil plans. The rebels finally arrive at the city of Milano, a powerful fortress commanded by the traitor, Duke Apros. Amidst the wedding preparations and conflicts, the rebels encounter a mysterious figure who was seeking to take advantage of the confusion to assassinate the Duke. That person was none other than Prince Tristan, heir to the throne of Zenobia, who had survived the castle invasion and had been in hiding all this time. The rebels recognize his authority and join him in the final advance that ends in Duke's death. The prince and the rebels then continue their march against the Empire with the advantage that the news of the prince's reappearance has brought hope to the oppressed across the continent, triggering popular uprisings in several regions. Gears arrives with Debonair in Shangri-La through a chaos gate that Rashidi had opened with the magic of the Black Diamond. Rashidi decides to bring down the flying city over Zenobia's castle with his powers in order to kill everyone in the region and Debonair along with it. But this plan is interrupted when the Liberation Army arrives on the island, defeats Gears, and frees Debonair. Debonair meets with his lover Norn and finally opens his eyes to the Emperor's real intentions, deciding to join the rebellion along with her against the Empire. In Shangri-La was also the temple of the goddess of justice, Felana, who comes into contact with Destin, recognizing her attitudes towards the will of the gods. Felana gives Destin an artifact that will allow him to find the keepers of the 12 Zodiac Stones and prove himself worthy of their powers, which would be very useful in facing Rashidi's evil powers and her Black Diamond. Destin thanks him and begins to find each of the stones as he visits the sites, taking them with him. The rebels hear that Rashidi was on Calbi Peninsula and go after him there. What awaited them in the region was the mighty Deva Figaro and his troops. After several conflicts, Figaro and his old friend in the Deva order Debonair cross swords. Debonair tries to show Figaro the evil intentions and cruelty the Empire was doing to the people in order to convince him to join the rebels. Figaro says that his oath of service is eternal within Dora and that he could not violate it for his honor and the honor of his land. Figaro dies in Debonair's arms, true to his oath until the end. Destin and his troops march through the region of Antalya, which was now ruled by the necromancer Omicron, who used the forbidden magic of summoning the dead to fight for the Empire. Destin and his troops found it very difficult to advance through the territory, as the dead were tireless and practically indestructible by ordinary means. In one of the dominated locations, they find a prison with the angel Yushis imprisoned. They release Yushis and she tells him that she was after her sister and that she had made a pact with Rashidi. Yushis makes a pact with Destin, offering his help to the rebellion in exchange for going after his sister. With Yushi's holy magic powers, the Liberation Army is able to advance against the undead armies and finally defeat Omicron. As promised, Destin heads to Tundra, the region that was being ruled by Maisel, Yushi's sister. The sisters face each other, but Maisel says that she could not be forgiven as she had broken the rules of the gods by making a pact with a human and on top of that giving him the Black Diamond. Maisel says that Rashidi must be stopped from bringing another ogre battle to this world and asks Yushis to kill her, as that would be the only way for her to return to the side of the gods. Yushis ends his sister's life and promises to fulfill her last wish. Destin decides to ask the legendary warriors of the skies for help to face the threat of Rashidi and the return of the ogres. He finds a Chaos Gate and uses the holy sword Brynhilde to release its seal, allowing him to go to the floating city of Muspelheim. There he finds the Knight Slust the Red bewitched and under Rashidi's control and needs to defeat him in combat. With a powerful blow, Destin knocks out the Divine Warrior, which eventually frees him from the enchantment. Slust is furious at being bewitched and wants revenge on the mage, joining the rebel troop to do so. Finding another Chaos Gate, they arrive at the floating city of Organa where Fenwal the Ice awaits them, also under the mage's spell. With a powerful blow, Destin knocks out the Divine Warrior, which ends up freeing her from the enchantment. Fenwal recognizes her sword Brynhilde that she had left for the humans and decides again to help humanity by joining the rebellion. Finally, after opening the third Chaos Gate, They arrive at the floating city of Shigald, where the last divine warrior awaits them under a spell. Dragon Faunvogel is defeated by Destin, freeing him from the enchantment. Grateful, Fogel decides to join the group to help stop Rashidi's plans. One last Chaos Gate is discovered by the rebellion that takes them to the sealed land of Antangel, where one of Diablo's generals, Gaff, had been sealed by the three warriors in the Ogre Battle. Rashidi had made a pact with the demon, saying he would free him if he took out the rebels. Despite being weakened, Gaff is still a challenge to the group, but is ultimately defeated. His body crumbles and his soul is sealed away in the underworld along with the rest of the ogres forever.
The rebel army is informed of a conflict taking place in the east and they decide to go investigate. They arrive on the islands known as Dragon's Heaven,
a region inhabited by these creatures and that was being invaded at this moment by Albelio, who had reincarnated after dying in the first confrontation with the rebels. Albelio sought the knowledge and power of dragon magic in the place to become even stronger. Even with his new draconic powers, he is defeated by Destin and his body is again not found after the battle. The rebels hear rumors that the Queen of Zenobia, Queen Florin, Tristan's mother, was not killed in the castle raid but taken to Fort Shulamana, so they decide to go there to find her. But for that they would need to pass through the sands of Dalmid Desert, where was the ninja master Prokian, the now faithful assassin of the Empire. Even with his skills, he is defeated and the region's residents freed from tyranny as the Liberation Army passes by. They eventually arrive at Fort Shulamana where another Deva awaits them. It was Previa, who had been sent by Rashidi to defeat the rebels. Even with Deva's powerful units, Destin manages to advance and defeats him, but not before Previa murders the trapped queen. Tristan mourns his mother's death and takes his mystic armband, a symbol of love and justice that was Zenobia's second divine treasure. The heroes continue their journey and arrive at the Shrine of Killan, where the last and most powerful of the Devas, Lovelan, was looking for the Holy Grail, said to have been hidden by a knight at the behest of the King of Zenobia for protection during the Civil War. Lovelan fights hard, but is defeated and killed by the soldiers of the rebellion. During the process of liberating the region, Destin and the others encounter Knight Percival who, seeing the group's attitudes and the presence of Prince Tristan, delivers the Grail into their hands. The rebellion now has possession of the three sacred treasures of Zenobia. Getting closer and closer to the Black Queen Endora, the rebellion reaches the great city of Zendu, where the general of the imperial troops, Haikash, prepared his warriors for the confrontation. He also spreads rumors to the inhabitants of the region that the rebels were wild and violent ogres, so that in whatever city the rebellion took over they were mistreated and booed, unlike the rest of the continent which welcomed them as a hope of freedom. The paladin Rani enters into battle against her father, trying to convince him to abandon the empire. But Haikash is totally loyal to his queen and her honor and dignity, having no choice but to finish him off. Rani wins and defeats her father, who in his last words says he loves and is proud of his daughter. With the general's defeat and the rebels drawing ever closer, the Paladins of Highland, an order of honorable knights who served as the Empress's guard, discovers Rashidi's plans for power and against her own world and confronts the Empress about her actions. They are accused of treason and Prince Gears is ordered to take care of the matter. And so it was done. The Order of Paladins is annihilated by the Immortal Knight. The few survivors try to go after the mage to stop the plan to resurrect Diablo, but are all killed on the way. Finally, they reach the central city's Idagenia, where Endora and her son Gears were waiting. It was the last battle to overthrow the Empire, and it would not be easy. Gears uses his powers and dark magic to multiply and violently advances his armies against the heroes. The troops' clashes are constant, but slowly the rebels manage to defeat Gears, who flees, and they reach Endora. Endora refuses to leave the throne and uses her powers and magic to confront Destin, who, seeing no other alternative, ends up defeating her and putting an end to her reign of terror. Despite the occupation of the region, Rashidi and Gears were not found there, but were seen going to Temple Shalina. The heroes follow in their footsteps to put an end to this once and for all. They arrive at Temple Shalina, a forbidden land where the evil gods were worshipped in the past and where Rashidi would use his powers to revive the Ogre Lord Diablo. The heroes arrive at the main temple and find Rashidi and Gears ready to begin the ritual. Aisha and Debonair face Gears one last time and defeat him, avenging her mother's death and the betrayal of the kingdom and mainland residents respectively. Rashidi faces Destin, Tristan, Yushis, and Saradin in a deadly battle. Saradin greets his former master and questions why he desires more power since he is already the most powerful mage in the world. Yushis asks where the Black Diamond is and says he will punish him in the name of the gods for what he did to his sister. Tristan says he will avenge the death of his parents and all the pain and suffering that Rashidi's actions have caused in people. Meanwhile, Destin orders the mage to stop the ritual and give up on his plans. Rashidi is defeated in battle, but confidently uses his blood and soul to complete the ritual. With the force of an earthquake, the Ogre Lord Diablo is brought before the warriors destined to destroy this world. Before Diablo has all his energy restored, the rebels advanced using all the strength of all the warriors gathered there. The power of the 12 Zodiac Stones and the strength of the 3 divine treasures to with great difficulty seal it again in the underworld. And so, after this macabre conflict, the evil threat that had hovered over the continent of Zytogenia for 25 years ended, with the fall of the Empire and the victory of the Liberation Army and its leader, Destin Feroda. Epilogue. With Endora, Gears, and Rashidi defeated, Zenobia's warriors return to their castle to rebuild their kingdom. Tristan talks to Destin to convince him to become the king for all his effort and dedication, but Destin shows that the true heir capable of creating a world without wars was Tristan. Prince Tristan is then crowned king and marries Paladin Rani, forming the alliance between the 2 greatest kingdoms of the past, Zenobia and Highland, to found the Kingdom of New Zenobia, which now incorporated the entire continent. To protect the entire kingdom, the 3 sacred treasures and the 12 Zodiac Stones, King Tristan Zenobia, now called the White King, creates 3 military regiments. The Holy Knights, led by Knight Lancelot Hamilton and also with Ash among his units. The Mages Regiment, commanded by Warren Ullman and also with Deneb Road among its units, and the Beast Legion, with Canopus Wolf as its captain. Yushis and the three divine warriors return to the clouds. Yushis becomes head angel for his efforts on behalf of the gods' will. Fenwal and Slust discuss the final battle against Rashidi and how he seemed to want to be defeated, worrying that it might serve some purpose. Thinking they are too suspicious, they head back to their floating islands to watch the humans below again. Destin decides to head north to investigate the Holy Lodician Empire and its plans to invade the continent. As he was leaving, he is approached by Gilbert, Debonair, Aisha and Saradin, who decide to join him and go on this adventure together. The new journey was just starting. The heroes could have no idea what fate would deal them. The battle has just begun. Until then, the gods will smile on the heroes. And so ends the story of the game Ogre Battle The March of the Black Queen. If you liked the video, leave a like and a comment. Thank you all and see you soon with more videos from the Ogre Battle Saga.